Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session, Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 2:30 p.m. in the board meeting room, 39 Bank Street, Chatham, Virginia. Caitlin, if you would call the roll, please.
All right, Mr. Cheshire.
Here.
Mr. Dalton.
Here.
Mr. Dudley.
Present.
Mr. Scares.
Here.
Mr. Warren. Mr. Barksdale.
Here.
Mr. Ingram.
Present. Are there any items to be added to the agenda? Having none, what about a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
Thank you, sir. What about a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Dalton, thank you, sir. Any discussion? All right, Caitlin, if you would take the vote. Okay. For the citizens' convenience, all work sessions and committee meetings are now being recorded and can be viewed on the same YouTube location as the Board of Supervisors business meetings. Please remember that the board's work sessions is designed for internal board and county staff communication, discussion, and work. It is not a question and answer session for the audience. Accordingly, during the work session, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectfully, any outburst or disorderly conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending person's removal from the work session. As a reminder, all county citizens and other appropriate parties are designated by the board's bylaws as permitted to make comments under the hearing of the citizens section of tonight's business meeting. That brings us down to 5 presentations. What we have? I thank you, Emily. Welcome. Good afternoon.
I don't know that it's on. Got a red, blue, green light now.
She's got it.
We contracted with the Berkeley Group to update our zoning ordinance. So we have 2 representatives with the Berkeley Group here tonight that will be giving you a presentation. This will be our official kickoff meeting. So they're going to give you a presentation and let you know how we will be moving forward. So I'll turn it over to them.
Right. Thank you, Emily. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm Rebecca Cobb. I'm a principal planner with the Berkeley Group, and I'm going to be assisting throughout this project. But I just wanted to thank you all for having us tonight, and thank you for putting out that call for help to update your zoning ordinance. That's something that excites us, actually, believe it or not. Some people think, ooh, gross, zoning ordinances. But one of our favorite things, or my favorite thing, is really getting to know the community. So I'm looking forward to learning all about Pennsylvania County and partnering with you all on updating the zoning ordinance. And I say partnering because sure, we're the consultant, we're the expert on zoning ordinance rewrites, and we've done this all across the state, but we haven't done this in your community. And so we're really going to be relying on you all and the Planning Commission very heavily, as well as staff, to really give us input and direction. So this is Pennsylvania County's ordinance. Along with me is Caroline. She's a planner with the Berkeley Group, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the process, and she's going to be leading you through our work sessions as we work together over the next a little over a year. So thank you for having us, and I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Rebecca, what was your last name?
Cobb, C-O-B-B.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Caroline, you up next? Welcome. You guys know a Clarence Monday by any chance?
We do.
Just checking.
Good afternoon. As Rebecca said, my name is Caroline Banterv. I'm a planner with the Berkeley Group. Thank you again for having us here this afternoon and for trusting us to partner with you all and update your zoning ordinance. We're truly very excited to be here today to kick off this project with you and with the Planning Commission, and are looking forward to meeting regularly to move through the update. So this is a brief agenda of our presentation and time this afternoon. I will try and keep the presentation brief to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. Really, the purpose of this presentation is just to introduce the project, to be able to answer any questions that you all may have about the process, and have a brief discussion regarding the public engagement plan that staff has provided you with. So the project can be divided into 3 phases. The first phase is ongoing now. It's the investigation phase. It's consisting of kickoffs with you, with staff, with the Planning Commission, a thorough review of your comprehensive plan, as well as the existing zoning ordinance, a zoning diagnostic, which is a document that goes through the zoning ordinance and evaluates the ordinance's compliance with the Code of Virginia and the regulations regarding local zoning laws, a joint kickoff meeting today, and then a public engagement plan that will be held throughout the month of August. Content development, this is the drafting portion, the meat of the ordinance. This will take about a year, give or take, and then finally the adoption phase. So we are kicking off this project with you all today. We will be holding public engagement throughout the month of August, and I'll go into some more detail about that later. We will be holding our first joint work session with you all and with the Planning Commission in October of this year to begin to review the draft content of the ordinance, and then we'll be holding bi-monthly work sessions with you all until October 2023, when you all will be presented with the full draft of the zoning ordinance for review. In December 2023, the public will have the opportunity to review that draft, ask questions, provide feedback. We will come together again in early 2024 for one final joint work session to clean up the ordinance, to incorporate any outstanding concerns, questions, provisions that may not have originally been included, and then you and the Planning Commission will be holding your public hearings in March and April 2024 to formally adopt the ordinance. So the process is just under 2 years long. It will move very quickly. There will be a lot going on over the next 2 years as we update together. So there are really 6 main focuses, 6 reasons why updating the zoning ordinance now is very important. The first, of course, is to comply with the Code of Virginia, ensuring that the ordinance meets state code requirements for local zoning ordinances and what can and cannot happen in terms of land use and development. To clarify the language, so making the language user-friendly and ensuring that the content is as clear as possible. This helps staff to be able to interpret and enforce the zoning ordinance. It allows the members of the community to better understand the zoning ordinance, and it allows you all in the Planning Commission to better interpret the zoning ordinance and use it in order to make effective land use decisions. Addressing modern zoning issues, so including modern zoning considerations, maybe new uses that have emerged in the county over the last several years based on best practices and issues and priorities that are specific to Pittsylvania County. Considering zoning flexibility, so this meaning not to loosen any regulations, but really to consider broadening terms, so there's not the need to amend the ordinance every single time something new comes along, as well as considering new uses, appropriate use standards, and making sure that the definitions are clear so that the zoning administrator and staff can make clear and informed decisions. Revising, so ensuring compatibility with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a very important document for setting the vision of the county over the next 20 years and ensuring that the goals and the vision put forth in this plan are being reflected in the ordinance. And then finally, reorganizing the ordinance to streamline content and make it user-friendly. So in our review of the comprehensive plan so far, we have noticed that there are multiple goals and strategies related to updating the zoning ordinance and ensuring that the zoning ordinance is bringing the policies and the goals set forth in the plan to fruition. So once again, the comprehensive plan is a plan, it is a guide, it sets the vision and goals for the county and guides the policy that is codified through the zoning ordinance, which regulates the use of land and structures, the size, height, area, location. It ensures that light and air are minimally polluted. It ensures that the public has access to basic conveniences and safety. It facilitates the efficient and cost-effective provision of public services and amenities, and it protects the environment and the community from obstruction, encroachment, congestion, dangers, and of course, general adverse impacts associated with new uses. So we have identified 2 examples of goals in the comprehensive plan that relate directly to this update process. and 2 examples for each goal of potential zoning elements that could be included in the ordinance in order to bring these goals to action. So the county has identified that it would like to discourage scattered development patterns, which are incompatible with the county's ability to provide adequate and cost-effective public services and facilities. One way this goal could be included in the zoning ordinance is to review and modify district standards as needed. This could include setbacks and minimum lot size. And then, of course, introducing provisions for cluster development and including appropriate incentives for this type of development. I'll also note that this potential zoning element is its own standalone goal in the comprehensive plan, apart from the one identified on the screen. Another goal that the county has identified is to promote a strong and diversified industrial and commercial economy that does not create significant impacts on residential areas, prime agricultural lands, or public facilities. So one way this could be incorporated potentially in the zoning ordinance is to broaden and modernize land uses and include appropriate by right uses and use standards, and then adding landscape buffering, lighting, and side and rear setbacks for industrial and commercial districts. These are some of our preliminary observations and priorities for inclusion based on the zoning ordinance diagnostic. You all will be presented with that diagnostic prior to the first joint work session in October for you to be able to review, and then we can have a discussion about it at that time. The first priority that we have identified is to consolidate uses, again, to streamline, make the language easier for the community to understand and for staff to be able to enforce. For example, in the heavy industry zoning district, many of the manufacturing uses are very specifically, but they could be simplified, combined into a more broad term, such as heavy manufacturing, for example, and then given a uniform set of use standards that are appropriate for the zoning district and for those uses. Modernizing, so considering including new land uses, for example, food trucks, farm wineries, mini storage facilities, short-term rentals, short-term campgrounds, uses that may have become more and more prevalent in Pittsylvania County, but the zoning ordinance does not currently address them. So considering what new uses might need to be added into the zoning ordinance. Incorporating new district regulations. This can include additional regulations about setbacks, lot coverage, density, landscape buffering, lighting, and many of the existing district regulations and standards can also be clarified for simplicity. Many of the existing references to the Code of Virginia are either outdated or obsolete, so it will be an important priority to make sure that updates reflect the current code as it has been enacted this year to achieve full compliance with state regulations. And then finally, reorganizing and consolidating articles, some information regarding uses or use standards, definitions, maybe. It's either missing from the ordinance or it's scattered throughout different articles of the ordinance, which makes it difficult for the community to understand and for staff to be able to properly enforce. So this consolidation and streamlining of the language will ultimately make the ordinance a much more user-friendly document. Here's an outline of our community engagement phase, which will be occurring in the month of August. I like to think of this as more of a tiered approach, so starting out with a very broad reach, getting a very broad feel of the consensus on the ground through the public survey, which will be gathering input from community members. It will be distributed throughout the county. Some people who answer may be very familiar with the zoning ordinances. Others may never have looked at the zoning ordinance in their life. Narrowing it a little bit through public workshops to focus on specific zoning concerns. And then finally, stakeholder listening sessions, which will be held to obtain very specific insight from community experts who are familiar with the nuances of the zoning ordinance. They might be using it every day for their job. And the community stakeholder sessions will be divided into 4 groups in order to be able to have some targeted and focused conversation and get specific feedback about certain components of the ordinance. The first group being business owners and economic industrial development representatives, the second group being bankers, attorneys, real estate agents, the third group being comprised of representatives of the historic community or agricultural community, as well as other special interest groups, VDOT, other community representatives, Department of Health, and then the fourth group being surveyors, contractors, and architects. Again, we will be holding public engagement throughout the month of August, so please feel free to promote this to your constituents, promote the survey, the workshop, the listening sessions. We will begin drafting and be coming back before you in October with content. We'll be meeting together throughout the course of a full year to review the draft content, and then it will move into the adoption phase in 2023 and 2024. So while we at the Berkeley Group may be the ones drafting the ordinance, this will ultimately be your document, and we want the content to be as specific to the county as it can possibly be. It will be a long process. We're rewriting a whole zoning ordinance in under a year, and so we have identified what we like to call ground rules, or keys to success, to ensure that our time together is as productive and successful as possible. So engaging from start to finish, we will be working with staff to identify a standing date for joint work sessions, so you all can attend and participate, doing your homework and reading the draft materials in advance. Staff will be providing you with those materials in your packets. Being ready to participate and discuss, ask questions of us, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, tell us what can be taken out, and striving for general levels of consensus. Informing your constituents in the greater community of the opportunities to participate, attend work sessions, provide their feedback. And then, as always, staff is a very valuable resource who can answer questions and walk through the process with you in the times when we are not able to meet together. Before we jump into the discussion about the public engagement plan and overall considerations, are there any questions about the schedule or general questions regarding the ordinance update? Hearing none, considering the example comprehensive plan goals related to land use, economic and industrial development that's compatible with the community and other identified issues, are there any key priorities that the board sees as being at the forefront for the zoning ordinance update?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
One I would really like us to focus on is solar facilities, buffers and different things such as that. I have dealt with them. Emily deals with them all the time, and one of the things that we've started finding out is, you know, they have a good sales plan, but they also don't follow through with a lot of it. I know early on when our solar facilities was beginning, the buffering system was terrible, and I'd like for really to get some more ordinance, some more strength to those, enforcement as well on that. I'm getting a lot of complaints from the citizens. So, thank you.
Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chairman.
Mr. Warren?
Yes, I would just like to say, I think it would be vitally important to our county to look closely at our ordinances to make it as user-friendly as possible to residential home builders, and in particular developers. If possible, we're going to need additional housing going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Caroline, what's your last name?
Vanterve, it's V as in Virginia, Anterve.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation. Anything else, Emily?
There are a few more slides
Okay, go
that
ahead.
I can move through quickly. The first being regarding the public survey. I believe you all received a paper copy of it. This will also be made available online in the papers. Surveys will be available in Emily's office. Does the board have any questions regarding the public survey or suggested modifications to any of the questions?
Anyone else?
Great. And then attachment B was the public workshop questions. This public workshop will be held at 6 p.m. on August 18th at the community center. Does the board have any questions regarding the public workshop exercises or any suggested modifications? All right. And then finally, attachment C addresses the stakeholder sessions. If you have any suggestions for participants who could be included in these stakeholder sessions, Emily and her staff have prepared a list, but if you all also have names, please provide those names to staff or to Rebecca and myself by Friday the 22nd. And our contact information is on the slide. Please feel free to email us at any time. Are there any final questions or comments, concerns regarding the ordinance update?
I think not. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All righty, up next, I think it's you, Mr. Haskins. Can you spare 15 minutes? Good to have you, sir.
Good to have y'all here. I'm sorry, my voice is gone a little bit. I picked up a cold from one of my officers who's a witness in a Thursday child sexual assault jury trial I had.
Yes, sir.
But I'm over it, and I have tested 5 days straight negative for COVID, so I don't have the COVID.
Good.
I'm over the cold. I just lost my voice a little bit. I appreciate y'all giving me your time today. And I have not approached anyone about this yet, but I want to let you know that my victim witness coordinator, Vivian Royster, is retiring. She's been with us 22 years. And we're in the process of trying to hire someone, and some people are talking to me about it, saying, well, I'd come or I'd think about it, but your salary isn't competitive. Our salary is $43,480 right now. And I am coming to you to beg, to ask if you could raise it up to about right around 50. I think we'd be able to attract some really quality candidates that way. I'm looking preferably for somebody with experience. Victim witness coordinator, they are an independent, semi-independent, I should say, agency within the county that works with my office. It consists of one director and one part-time assistant director, and they basically manage a lot of stuff for us. They help us track down victims. They help get information out to victims on how to apply for assistance, how to apply for victim notification for people being released from prison. When we need a witness tracked down and the office is too busy, they do that for us. They attend our meetings. They help us out tremendously. I can give you any other information you want about them. But what I'm telling you is we need a quality candidate to help keep this program running strong, to help the victims in the county. And I'm asking for just a little bit of assistance. I know I don't come to you often because I'm very painfully aware that we're talking about other people's money, always. And that's why I don't come to you very often looking for help, and I am coming for this one, I would hope, small request. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions, gentlemen? This is my third year on the board, and I think this is the first time you've come to see us, and I commend you for that. Hey, how many years did you say Vivian has?
I believe 22.
22. And you're looking at raising that starting salary to what?
To 50,000.
I'm sorry.
50,000.
Even?
It can be even, but yeah, she's
Okay.
43,480 right now, and she's going to be gone. We're already starting to take applicants. I think quality candidates out there that are holding back because they're asking me privately what the salary is, and they're saying, well, I don't think I could take that cut.
I've been gone 13 years and had the honor of working with you for Lord knows how many, and I saw firsthand how vital this position truly is. The attorneys exercise wonderful compassion and care for the victims and the family of victims. I just saw that this past Tuesday. But the victim witness coordinator just takes it a little bit further, if you would. And it's a blessing what you guys do, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll give you an example. Last Tuesday was the sentencing for the Fairgrounds murder. He got 43 years, which was a big testament to all the hard work the sheriff's office did. But things behind the scenes you don't see is we had a victim's family coming down to North Carolina for that, and Vivian worked hours to coordinate with them, to answer their questions, to help set up meetings with us so we can make sure that they understand fully what's going on. Another example I'll give you is when Mr. Ochoa murdered his wife in front of his stepchildren. And one of those young ladies developed Tourette's as a result of that. She had to go into counseling. Vivian helped set that up. And in the middle of the moment when I'm out there with the crime scene guys, and state police had to get involved because the officers had to fire shots at the assailant who pointed a rifle at him. There was mass confusion on how to handle these children because the mother was dead, the father-in-law is going to jail. He was actually going to the hospital first because he had hurt himself. Vivian stepped up and arranged to help find other family members who could step in and take these children in, you know, who are anywhere from 17 to 8 years old, to make sure that they had a place to go overnight and get immediate counseling for the trauma of the victims. That's the kind of necessary impact that we have. And I'm just asking for some help to help me find a quality candidate that'll come to Pennsylvania County because the salary is right, as opposed to somebody who says I can't come because the salary is just not high enough.
Yes, sir. I think help is on the way. Come on, Kim.
How this is funded and that kind of thing. You may not know how this program is funded. It is a grant. It's 75% federal, 25% state. You all have absolutely zero local money in it right now, never have for about 20 years. And they've been able to, throughout the years, if there were insurance increases, if there were salary increases, that grant was able to pay that. It is unable to do that, and they won't increase it. We won't get any more money for this. So these individuals that do this hard work for 2 years have gotten nothing additional. No additional increases or anything because we never have before. But now I think is a good time for you all to help out this program because it is a necessary program. I did take the liberty of going through because there is an assistant that's full-time that works with Vivian. She has not had an increase either. I don't think she is interested in this full-time position, but just so that she would be in line with everybody else, I just kind of calculated what if we gave her 5%, because that's what everybody else is getting, plus this additional, it's going to be just over $10,000 to do all that, because you have to increase the salary and the benefits when you do that. So I just wanted to help Brian out because I knew the financial end of it he may not know, and you all might want to know how that funding is handled.
Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you got to phone a friend, you know. I have called the state authority that oversees this grant, and they will not write a new grant until next year.
Okay.
And that'll be good for the next 3 years. It's not going to go down, but I don't know if it's going to go up or not, but we need to hire somebody now.
Yes, sir.
So we're asking for help. Thank you.
Any
Thank you,
questions, gentlemen?
Just have one for Kim. So I'm assuming this is going to either
you, Brian.
come from end of year money or from the contingency funding?
Correct. Because this is a grant, so I know you can't hear me from my home. So it is a grant, so your contingency fund is contingency slash grant local match. Now you all would be putting match or skin in the game, and that's where it would come from either your contingency fund or from year-end monies.
I can't really speak for anyone else, but I know absolutely I'm going to support this 100%.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Warren.
While we have Kim here, don't run off.
Yeah, don't ask me, ask the expert.
From Mr. Haskins' department, do we have any carryover unspent money?
I didn't look at that, but I'm pretty sure that he does in his operating budget.
I thought he would, so we could do it with
Utilize that. Possibly, too.
And we can do that when you all see your FY23 carryovers from 22. We can make sure that that's in that list.
That was another question. How quick can we do this?
You can go on and, I mean, if you wanted to go on and do it, the fact of the matter of fixing the budget, of course, they wouldn't need these funds till later on in the year. Because, of course, it's going to take a while to replace Vivian. So you should be okay as far as funding from that grant. That would cover it until we do the actual official change.
Brian,
in
when did you say
23.
she was leaving?
Her last day is the end of this month.
Wow, okay.
It's quick. And
the bottom line is, he's recruiting now.
Yeah, absolutely.
we're advertising a position now. We're just not advertising a salary pending me coming here. But people have called me and said, what would the salary be? And I've told them, and they're like, okay, thank you, no thanks.
Y'all help me out. How can we give him the certainty when he leaves this building?
I can attend the meeting tonight if you need me to, if you have any other questions too.
Okay.
Okay, put it,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
What the board would need to do, of course, in the work session here, you would need a proper motion to approve Mr. Haskins' request, and that is to increase the salary to $50,000 as he's requesting, and also to fund the additional component that Ms. Vanderhyde mentioned for the assistant that's in the office, and direct the staff to bring back the appropriation when we do the reappropriations later this fall.
So just do a motion now, and then it can be added to the work session, to the business meeting.
I make the motion that we approve Mr. Haskins' request not to exceed $12,000 and that we use, and accordingly with the assistant, to raise them to the recommended amount from Ms. Vanderhyde, not to exceed $12,000, and for the funding of this to come out of carryover from the Mr. Haskins' budget, Commonwealth Attorney's budget, from the prior year.
that'll work for you?
Absolutely.
Good answer. What about a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barksdale, question or a second? Good, thank you, sir. Any further discussion? All right. Caitlin, you got the motion?
ready.
Okay, we got the second. So we can get you enough votes now, Brian.
You don't have to show up tonight.
He's already getting motion.
Yeah. It's second over here, Jesse.
You're up at second.
Oh, second. That's good.
There you go. It is now.
Mr. Haskins, congratulations, 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
what y'all do.
Appreciate what
Brian.
y'all do. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Mr. Warren. Yeah, it is. Up next, it's you, Kim. This will be the fiscal year in review.
See you, Richard.
So I have little to share with you, but I wanted to give you some highlights, just what I've noticed and what I've seen in the last couple of weeks. These are all things that are on cash basis, which means money in, money out. That's it in a nutshell. We do work from now until September when our auditors come to put this more in line with what you see in the audit, which is on a modified accrual basis. But just so you can get some idea of how we ended the year, I wanted to give you a brief high-level view. So the first slide that you have there before you and on the screens is a preliminary look at our revenue sources. And I'm comparing these major revenue sources from 22 to 21. So you can see our 5 major categories of revenue are really real estate, personal property, mobile home and barns, machinery and tools, merchants capital, and then your public service corporations. So you can see a lot of those, we're at less revenue than we were last year. What saved us, if you see that bottom line, of course, we have $855,000 to the good. And that is coming primarily from your personal property tax increase that happened in June because property values went up. We did not change the rate, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard calls from citizens about their personal property, their cars going up, that tax amount. And so that drove a lot of it, as well as we did increase the meals tax by 2% or 2 cents on the meals tax rate. And so that also produced a lot of revenue that we didn't have otherwise. Transient occupancy, I did add this on here because that was another thing that you all agreed to this past year. And transient occupancy, we collected $12,426.45. And if you'll remember, that just started in January. So we didn't actually budget anything for that $12,000 in FY '22, nor did we have information enough to really budget anything for FY '23. So I'll call that free money. It's not tagged to anything as of right now. And do remember that 2% of that money we get to keep, and then 2% you all have decided where those funds go, 60% to ODAF, and then the other 40 is shared equally between the Historical Society and Danville DMO. So those funds are going out this month based on this $12,000 figure. The next slide shows actual to budget. So for '22, our actual cost, or the actual amounts that you see there, are much greater than they were in from the budget, which is good, which means that we were very conservative in our budgeting. Of course, personal property was it's 115% over that budget, and it's because of the property values changing, and our meals tax is much more as well because, as you all know, if you're going out to eat, everything costs more, and as the cost goes up, so does the tax because, of course, that base cost is what drives the tax amount. So our actual revenues from those sources of funds were $43.5 million. The next slide, I just wanted to basically compare our revenues to our expenses. And of course, this again is on a cash basis, so it's money in, money out. Our general fund revenues totaled $75.160 million, and our expenditures were at $71,835, which looks like, wow, we did really, really good. But you can recall that we did have a great number of vacancies during the year, and so a lot of those funds will need to roll over to next year to make up our salary differences. So that's what you know when you see that there are funds available. When we're saying we're carrying over budget dollars, that's how we can do that, because of course we didn't spend all of our budget. Water and sewer fund, I have highlighted in yellow because you can see that our water revenues were at 2.9, but our expense was at 3.8, and I wanted to explain that just a little bit. We've had some major expense that has occurred. Of course, we've got the 2 water lines that ARPA funds will cover. Those funds have to transfer into this particular fund, so it's showing some expense, but it's not really showing a revenue as of yet. Also out there is the fact that you're doing a HURT sanitary sewer and pump station, and that is a very large expense, about $500,000 that's out there with no revenue source. We were going to take it from fund balance. So, of course, that fund balance is not really a revenue. It's just balance that you have in your savings account. So I wanted to share that a little bit with you, and that points to the fact, too, that, you know, later in the year, near the end of the year, you all will be voting on raising those rates that hadn't been done in quite a while, and I think that's very necessary. Our landfill fund, our revenue for this year, and I do want to note that I did remove all the bond funds because I wanted you to see this is just operational revenue that came in at $6 million, and our expense for the year was at $5.6 million. So I think that's doing very well. There will be probably some carryover there. You all will make some adjustments to your bonds at your next meeting, and I'll go through those next steps in just a little bit. The next slide talks about your ARPA. Yes, do you have a question?
Slide.
You can, sure, that's absolutely.
Can you tell us approximately what amount of ARPA funds we had allocated to those 2 water lines?
Yes, it's on actually the next slide that you're getting to is the ARPA obligations. It's $1.7 million, but of course, we haven't spent all those. So in the expenditure total here, that's just actual monies that have gone out. And so we haven't done very much, just some engineering and design work on those. So they're listed on that next page. So under your ARPA obligations, we were able to claim what they consider general services money, and we did that to the tune of $10 million. That makes it much easier that a lot of these things don't have to flow to the federal government. and follow the strict guidelines that they have. So some of the things that we're using this general services money for, it allows us to do those items that are not in bold, the broadband infrastructure, volunteer fire and rescue grant, Horseshoe Road water extension, and Robin Court system improvement. We did take a portion of the $800,000 that we plugged the FY23 budget with, or balanced it with. So the 646 just gets you to $10 million. The other piece of that is the next to the last line that says FY23 budget obligations not yet earmarked. At 166,000 makes up that difference of that plug. The other items that are highlighted there in bold are items that are finished, completed, and we are done with them. And those are directly reported to the federal government as things that we did that were truly ARPA acceptable. And that was the premium pay, the vaccine incentives for both our volunteers and our county employees, and then hazard pay for our volunteers. So you've got about $445,000 that's truly not ever been earmarked for anything. That's at that next to the last line. But just bear in mind, there will be no more ARPA, there will be no more CARES. So we're getting to the end of, you know, some dry powder that necessarily we didn't earn or anything like that. So we've been very fortunate to be able to have those funds available. Some of the things that I want you all to be aware of are the economic impacts that are facing us as a locality. It's facing our citizens, it's facing everybody. Salaries and benefits are up 7% over last year. Our high turnover for employment and struggling to find qualified applicants, as you could hear from what Mr. Haskins spoke of just earlier. It used to be some people would just come to the county because it was a good place that you knew you had stability in the workplace, and you know, if you got a job, it was a good job, good stable job, and we're not seeing that much anymore. People are going where they get paid the most money, and so we're having to compete with that as a locality. Our VRS rate this year increased 13.4% over last year. We have no say over that whatsoever. That's sent to us by the state of Virginia, the Virginia retirement system. Our fuel costs have increased 95%. So citizens are feeling it, the locality's feeling it too, and we have a lot of vehicles on the road, from deputies' cars to landfill trucks to water and sewer people working on water and sewer lines, and so we're feeling that crunch as well. Our reassessment cost, we actually budgeted in your contingency $500,000 for reassessment costs. The way we do reassessment is we budget half one year and half the next year. And we're thinking the estimate for that reassessment will run right at $1.5 million. So technically we need $750,000. So we have about $137,000 left in reassessment for 22 that you all will see a carryover for that'll help offset that sum. So we still have a shortage of about $113,000. And another thing that's going to impact us is the fact that our reassessment that we get in won't help us very much until FY25. Right. So we're getting ready to start FY23. So 24 is going to be a tough budget year. And I just want to warn you that before we start, that it's going to be really hard to find the dollars we need to make up the budget. Of course, our construction costs have increased. Yes.
Mr. Warren has a question.
Yes.
I noticed what you said in your slide about not until then, but it's a good opportunity for me, for one, and I'm sure my colleagues had the same question. Are the assessments that are out there doing now staying on course to provide the information by November the 1st? Because we were assured they would do that on those structures that were not on the records. And we were assured by the Commissioner of Revenue that she could get them on the January cycle so they could affect the upcoming budget. Because I do agree with you 100%. Next year's budget's going to be a bear, and we need that revenue to avoid problems for the citizens of Pennsylvania County.
Right, and that's some of what I'll touch on, like how are we going to combat some of this? So it's coming up, but I'm glad you brought that up because that's very important. And our contractors do have those permits, they're working those permits. And we are certainly going to add what we can add beforehand. This was just referring to the new reassessments on properties we already had on the books. Our cost of borrowing funds has also increased. That will impact us. And just so you all know, I know that you'll get an economic development update later, but we're doing a lot, and we put no new money in this budget. We couldn't afford to put any new money in the budget for incentives. And that's very scary. Some of these incentives are very, very large. I know they come years down the road, but if you're not funding your economic development fund, it will hurt you in the future. Some of our major construction projects, there are lots of them on the horizon. You've been in many meetings, and I've been in them with you, of things and decisions you have to make in the future. And so we've got a lot coming for Pennsylvania County. So what can help with these impacts? I checked with Emily earlier this week to find out how is construction in the county. That's very important. Even though we don't have reassessment that on due or finalized until FY25, we are still building. And, you know, it's kind of scary when those interest rates go up. A lot of people will not build like they were.
That's right.
But our building permits are up 67 permits over the same time period last year. She did January to June of last year, and then January to June. And so we are at 67 more permits this time this year than we were a year ago. And of course, as Mr. Warren stated earlier, our building permits are being worked back to 2019 by our reassessment contractor, and so we will be able to add those onto the books, and we're hoping that that will bring in some revenue. We're also making great collection efforts in our departments that we see need help in getting some of their monies in. We want to make sure that we are receiving all the revenue that the county is due, and it's just not laying somewhere or falling in a crack. And Patsy Budd is our internal auditor, and she is doing a fabulous job, not only at the Commissioner of Revenue's office, but she's now doing some work at the Water and Sewer Department to get some of those collections in as well. So the reassessment might be in view until 2024. There's no new revenues, and I've told you that earlier, so we won't belabor that point. Yes?
Yeah, just the terminology you just used, are they only looking at new permits for, instead of looking at all the supposed properties that were found during the?
Yes, they're looking at all of those.
So
but-
they're looking at the ones,
Absolutely.
the 3,200 parcels that also had supposedly new structures?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make
As
sure.
well as, you know, they're going back to review the permits that were worked, some by Bright Minds, and then, of course, there were some that just hadn't been worked altogether. So we wanted to make sure there's nothing that's incomplete or fallen by the wayside that we could go ahead and add now. Also, Patsy Budd is our internal auditor that I mentioned earlier. She is working as the liaison between the county, the commissioner's office, as well as Pearson Group, our reassessment contractor, and she is doing a very good job of making sure they get what they need and getting any answers answered for them. The next slide that I wanted to go over is contingency fund. It's very important, especially for new board members that may not understand. You do get mixed up with a lot of the terminology that we use. We've got unassigned fund balance, we've got unappropriated fund balance, we've got contingency fund, and I wanted to explain a little bit of that and then go over the numbers. So the contingency fund are funds that you all have budgeted in each budget, that it may be things that may be iffy or not sure of whether it's going to be covered or not. We'll put that in the contingency fund in case other things come up. This is also the fund that you all hit for local matches for grants and things like that. So this year's budget, which includes the list that you see before you, totals $982,309. And I won't read all of those, but you can see what they are there. But since the budget, there have been things that come up. Just one came up today for Brian Haskins. Now, we're going to try to use carryover money from his budget. But typically for a grant that just pops up during the year, this is where we go to see is there funds available, if it's not available in that particular department's budget,
But I made the motion,
to take it out of his.
and if it
Absolutely.
doesn't come out of there, then you need to come back.
Okay.
And make us aware of that.
Yeah, but you
We-
should
we
be
wanna
fine.
follow- We want to follow the motion that was made.
We shall do that, for sure. So the grants that have come up to date that I know of, and these are just a short list, the County Administrative Search Grant, you all will vote on that tonight. That's $5,000 local match. The sheriff recently brought before you the fact that they're going to apply for a grant for body cameras. Their body cameras are antiquated. It is a local match of $141,000. That has not been budgeted anywhere. So we need to check to see where we can get funds for that particular match. The reassessment contract, which I mentioned earlier, will need $113,000. And then there's a dam design and engineering local match for the project that's on Cherry Stone and Roaring Creek dams. That's $34,300. Some of that is still iffy. Even the body cameras, they may not get the grant. That's why it's kind of wait and see. But just so you know what could happen, it's about just shy of $300,000. The next thing I wanted...
Hold
yes,
that
question.
slide, Mr. White.
Yes.
But Kim, on those grant contingency since budget items, am I right that I think Mr. Taylor, Sheriff Taylor, has brought before us before in relationship to those body camera matches that maybe didn't make the budget but was on his wish list? Am I correct in?
Yeah, I mean, it's been in your CIP. He does have that included on his CIP.
That's what I thought. Back when the original budget process started, it was, every department does a wish list, so to speak. They would like it, but we always can't give them everything they want.
Right, and
we
he
would like
has-
to, but we can't.
Right, he has about $65,000 in his FY23 budget for body cameras. And I did pose the question, I never got an answer from him. I assumed that if we got the grant for almost $300,000, that this 65 would be used toward this match. So that's why I kind of put the full amount on there, but like I said, in the way it was worded in what was provided to you all is that monies would come from the sheriff's office and any difference would come from the contingency fund.
Okay.
So kind of left it open-ended, but that's not something that, if we were to get that kind of money, we would, that would be something that we would bring back to you all anyway.
Right. Thank you.
So that was your contingency fund. So that's basically a budget item. Your unassigned fund balance is your savings account. It's your rainy day fund. It's your unappropriated surplus. All of those titles are synonymous with the same thing. It's what you got in the bank. So basically, the official definition is unassigned fund balance is the residual classification for the government's general fund and includes all spendable monies not contained in other classifications. And so in your financial management policy, it tells you what we must keep on hand to make our obligations. And what we have decided is that an unassigned general fund balance shall not be less than 20% of the average actual general fund expenditures for the preceding 3 fiscal years to address natural and man-made disasters and to offset budget fluctuations. So the past 3 fiscal years, our balance should remain at $14.2 million is where we should try to maintain. I will say that we have at times been below that, and you do feel it. It's hard. You don't have dry powder. Some of you have been on the board. When it hit those, we hit $3 million at one time. And $3 million for a county as large as ours is not much money. And people don't understand, the magnitude of what we do here at the county and what those services cost. So we want to make sure that we maintain a very healthy fund balance. It also helps when we go to the market, the bond market, to get a solid credit rating. They want to see a good, solid fund balance. And if you use fund balance for any reason, they want to know why. And it needs to be one-time only expenditures. And if it's anything for operation, it's frowned upon and you get negative points for that. So luckily, even when we hit those low points, the things that we did with fund balance were okay things with the credit market because they were one-time only expenditures. But it did hurt when we didn't have revenues to replace what we had taken. So when you get to the fund balance, you can see how it has made a dip, and we have started coming back up. So our low point was 2018 at $18.8 million, and you can see that it has, it rose some in 2019, and then it took a great big jump in 20 and 21. ARPA and CARES shined a beautiful light on us and helped us get to where we are. Not to mention, you are very conservative in your budget efforts, and we are very conservative in getting the best services for the least cost for our locality. So I applaud you all for that hard work that you do for our budget and things that you look at to make sure that we are doing the very best that we can. So even though we're at $28 million, we're still not at our very high point, which was 2014 at $33.4 million. So we're in a good, safe place, but don't get comfortable.
But Ms. Vanderhyde,
Yes.
if I could follow that up, having been in those trenches when we were not as good as we appear to be right now, I think it's really important to still reflect that when we look at this 28 million, a lot of that 28 million is promised over the next 6 months because the tax revenue's already been received to cover those expenses. And this is more for the citizens' reflection. Don't want you to think we're sitting on an excess of 14 million we ought to be spending somewhere, because that's not reality. A lot of this money's being spent, and don't you agree that we should have considerably more than 14 million in excess with the capital expenditures that we're facing over the next few years?
Absolutely. And to kind of bounce off of what you just said, this snapshot in time is just that. It is a picture at June 30, after all the dust is settled, and you'll see it only goes to 21, because what I've given you in these slides prior are cash revenues and cash expenditures. A lot will happen to our balance between now and when you all get a presentation in December from our auditors, because you have to account for all your revenues as well as all of your expenditures. And as Mr. Warren alluded to, this is the prettiest time that you'll see in our entire year because we just got paid. June 30, we have just experienced a tax collection that this year it was due June 10th. A lot of our citizens, and they're very good about paying their taxes, not only pay the first due period, but they also pay the second due period. So we get a huge influx of cash at June 30. Now these figures have taken into account that the due to has been moved, so you don't really see that. But it is a beautiful picture in time. It doesn't get any better than this dollar figure right here. So it was very important for him to point that out. So with that, we will go to our next steps. Finance will be extremely busy in the coming months, and so I wanted to let you know what's coming ahead. August the 16th, which is your next board meeting, we will hold a public hearing to approve the FY22 budget amendments. So these are just amendments that we need to finalize FY22. See where we are, make sure everything's in the black. And then September 20th, we will hold a public hearing to approve the FY23 budget amendments. And the reason I know there will be public hearings is if anything is over 1% of our budget, our total budget, we must hold a public hearing to be in compliance with the state of Virginia. And I do know on August the 16th, we will be making some adjustments to your bond funds and other things that are pretty large ticket items. Nothing that's costing you money, it's just things that we haven't previously budgeted. And because of that, they want to see us have a public hearing. Then from July the 19th until September the 30th, we'll be preparing for our annual FY22 audit. And then the week of October 3rd through 7th, our final FY22 audit field work will be performed by Robinson Pharma Cox. And then they will be here on December the 20th to do their annual presentation of the financial statements for FY22. So it takes quite a bit of time to get everything tied up in a pretty little bow on the top. So with that, I'm glad you all asked questions throughout the presentation, but I am here to certainly answer any more questions you may have.
Thank you,
Yes.
Kim.
Is this presentation on the county website?
Not yet, but we'll make sure that it gets up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, Kim, I think you're going to talk to us about insurance premiums?
Yes. So last month, I told you all that we did have some insurance increases. I do not have a presentation for this, but I did want to share. I have worked very closely with Ms. Tracy Worley at the school board office. We are in the same pool together. We are a self-funded insurance group. And what that means is that we pay premiums into a fund. It's called our Employee Health Fund. And so when we make payments, we pay Anthem the cost of our premiums and then our claims. We pay all of our claims. So we have to make sure we have sufficient monies going into that fund to cover all of our necessary expenditures for the year. Currently, our Employee Health Fund stands at $5.4 million, which is a good, healthy balance. So we want to make sure that we are good stewards of that money, that we don't take more than we think that we can handle. So we have reviewed the rates, and copies of the Anthem rates and the dental rates are in your packet for you to review. We did have increases to our health insurance, and this is the rate. When I speak of this increase, and I think people get caught up on that rate increase, it's anywhere from 6 to 13% depending on which plan people choose. And this is both the employee share and the employer share. So it's the entire rate. It's just not what the employee pays. So on the Anthem side, what we try to do, we are trying to drive more people to the high deductible plan. It is the most responsible plan for employees to have. It helps the fund. It helps people that are very sick or very healthy. It's a very good insurance plan to have. It makes each person more responsible for their health care, and as such, we want those premiums to be at a good rate to drive more people to it. So you will see on the high deductible plan, there are no increases to the employee this time. Most of the increase is being experienced in the Key Care 30 with the $1,000 deductible, which is the richer plan, and most of the increase is in the employee-only section. The other segments we did increase, employee plus one, employee spouse, we increased by 15% to the employee, and then in employee family, we increased a little bit less than that, 10%, because the family plan is so expensive. And I think you all made a plan several years ago to try to get help for those other tiers and not just employee only anymore. So that's what we're proposing. In order to do this, we will have to absorb some of the increase in the Employee Health Fund. It's $34.17 per member per month that will be absorbed in the fund. And even with doing that, we believe that the fund will still be making money next year. So we feel fairly confident that that's going to be fine for us. On the dental plan, and you'll see those rates as well, we had some increase and some decrease. So some people will experience somewhat of an increase, and then others will have quite a bit of a decrease. So our decreases ranged, well, in the employee basic coverage, it says decrease, but they're minor increases, 10 cent, 20 cent, 16 cent, very minimal. Under comprehensive plan, if you have that particular plan, you see quite a large decrease in those plans, for anywhere from $12 to $35 decrease per month. So I think that will help to offset some of the increase in the premiums for those that have Key Care 30. So what we're asking for tonight, if we make these changes, we will have to pay as Pittsylvania County to the health fund approximately $170,000 for the year next year. The way we will fund that is every year we budget $100,000 for health insurance increases. Last year, FY22, we had none. So we have $100,000 from last year that will carry over. And this year in FY23, we have another $100,000. So we have a total of $200,000, which will pay for the increase in our health insurance coverage. Dental, those changes cost you nothing. There's no change in the employer share. And then the other piece that it will pay for is to continue to provide $800 into each person's HSA account who choose the high deductible plan. So there are the things that we would like for you all to consider to approve tonight, so that we can go ahead and get our documentation out to our employees for open enrollment. That comes up in August. So with that, I will entertain any questions. It's very complicated. It's a lot of words, and I know I shared a lot.
Yes, I make the motion that we approve the presentation as presented by Ms. Vander in relationship to the Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield health rates and the dental rates that are offered to the employees of Pennsylvania County.
And we also need you all to approve the $800 HSA and everything that's in that motion.
And that's what I said, as
All of
presented
it.
by Ms. Vander.
Wonderful, perfect.
Catch-all. I'll second that
Y'all are
motion.
awesome.
Any further discussion?
Yes, sir, I have one.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Vander Hyde.
Yes.
Again, more for the public. We talk about self-insurance, and, you know, that's not a general concept that our citizens truly get every day. And I think it's important for them to understand that it's $5.4 million in our fund, but if we had a run or a really high claim by one single individual, we have aggregate insurance to pick that individual up, and we have an aggregate for the entire group. So it's not like our fund could go to zero in 1 year if we had a critical person. And you might want to share those numbers if you know them off the top of your head.
Absolutely. Our run out is right around $2 million now. So if we decided all of a sudden, well, we don't want to use Anthem anymore, we have to have at least $2 million to just leave the group and go to something else. And it'll be very hard if you went to something else to really be self-insured, because then you'd almost need $2 million more dollars, because you never know when that's going to go down. We, and our specific stop loss did change a little bit this year, and I don't know that figure off the top of my head, but there is a certain point that we are covered, and we do have some insurance to cover that. But
Per individual and collective for the group. So
that is correct.
We're isolated from it
For
devastating
really
the county
devastating us, exactly.
and causing a big tax increase for the citizens. I just wanted them to be aware of that.
And this fund-
There's
right.
stop gaps in there.
Right, and this fund can only be used for employee health insurance or dental insurance. That's the only thing it can be used for. So we're very protective of those funds.
Good for you. Anything else? Kim, I think you're done.
Great.
Thank you so much. Chris and Casey.
We got to finish the vote off.
Say it again.
Got to finish the vote off.
We've already done it.
Have we? Okay. Got it.
Chris and Casey. How y'all doing?
Basically, we're here today to discuss some EMS certification issues. Wasn't aware fully of all of what we need to discuss, but tell you a little history of how it all started. Back many years ago, in the late 80s, I tested out as an EMT. I was certified through the state of Virginia. Now they have changed it up. The state of Virginia makes you go and get your national registry. That way you're covered throughout the whole nation. It is more continuing ed hours that has to be done now under the National Registry. Currently, I am a EMT. I have to do 40 hours over 4 years of continuing ed. Under the National Registry, it's a little more stringent. You've got to do it over a 2 or 3 year program. So basically, I'm here today to discuss, the EMS certifications and any questions you may have.
I placed this on because, as many of you know, we've discussed this several times. I've been fairly boisterous about the fact that I think the requirement of the national test in relationship to how it affects volunteerism in rural areas like the state of Virginia makes it a little prohibitive for folks that are really qualified to serve, but they're having to answer questions that they will never see in Pittsylvania County. And I understand that, but it creates so many problems. And I was contacted by several folks from the fire and rescue about this recently, but have been over the last several years, and started doing just some preliminary inquiries myself. And as I was able to find out, there are certain instructors that appear to have a higher pass rate than some other instructors. If we could gather some data on that and at least work with our volunteer agencies to maybe coordinate that, and if the county could maybe try to secure the services of some of those that have pretty high pass rates and be the driving force to establish some of those classes. And Chris, you work with those to get those classes signed up possibly if it works out within the county. And then I also wanted to, as part of this, ask my colleagues if they would be willing for us to send a letter from our board signed by our chairman addressing our concerns and the problems that it creates with this very rigid process now that's encountered by not just us, but all rural areas in the state of Virginia. And they are the decision makers that decided to go to the national test, and request some consideration from them to make some adjustments or changes that would not make it so prohibitive for rural Virginia.
So you're asking for like a variance for this locality, or are we
No,
trying to change the whole state?
I would ask for legislative change, period.
To move away from the National Registry?
Well, I'm told back to a system where the state controls the test, not the national.
Okay, it's.
I don't know that I think that can happen, but I think our state legislators need to be made aware of how problematic it is now.
Let me ask you this. I know I've had my EMT for 20-something years. Now I'm on Virginia, I'm not national. And granted, if I went national, I could go anywhere in the country. That is, to me, is not a selling point. If the training was different as an EMT, I could see that, but it's not.
It's nationwide.
So why is that stipulation being added? And I agree with Mr. Warren, is that new EMTs have to have national registry, but they're not moving. And the only thing you're doing is discouraging. One is some more stringent tests, which I don't disagree with. You want the best of the best when for EMT, ALS, whatever. But a selling point that I can go to Hawaii and be an EMT, a big whoop. We're looking at Ringgold, Westover, But, and to me, it's not a selling point. You're doing the same training. Now I know from my EMT, now it's from 5 years research, now it's 4 years. And it's hurting, I think it's really hurting the volunteer time because we're doing it free as it is, and now you're gonna add more to us on research. And that needs to be changed. I mean, I don't see why Virginia can't say, if you pass Virginia EMS, then you're in the EMT in Virginia.
I don't know that they still have testing and everything in place like they did when we took it.
They
I
do
can tell you
not.
how long
And
And that's what I'm wondering.
It was
so.
a tremendous cost savings when they moved away from having to have the tests themselves, monitor the tests and all that. But there's a lot of decisions that are made, and you don't realize the unintended consequences that come out of those. And I think we're experiencing those as a member of rural Virginia, that, you know, yes, the state saves some money, but in the big scheme of it, because we can't find the volunteers, you can't, I mean, and ones you do have are having difficulties getting over this national test. So now, I mean, there's so many stipends having to be paid. I wonder if we looked throughout the state at all the stipends that's having to be paid and everything to get these folks, if it's really a tax savings overall. I mean, because of what you're experiencing. It may be a tax savings to the state budget, but the undue difficulty it creates for service and for viable agencies to survive makes it more costly to the citizens of the state than a little bit of money that they're able to save by going to the national program. That's why I request my colleagues give consideration and if possible, direct our county attorney to draft something that we could all agree to and have it sent up next month.
What are your thoughts about local versus national?
I mean, I'm in favor of the national program, but that's just on my opinion on it. If a family moves here for industry and they're already certified in another state, they don't have to sit through the same class. We can come into the volunteer system, or even come into public safety and work. You know, I mean, yeah, you said you could go to Hawaii and work, you know, under the National Registry. You can move anywhere in the states, you know, that have the National Registry.
We could incorporate that if they changed and went back to a state test. We could incorporate in that legislation, if the state representative desired, that they could say anyone that possesses the state registry would automatically be exempt from the Virginia test. That happens with lawyers that cross over, move from one state to the other if they've been practicing a while. It happens in the industry that I serve, that, you know, it's reciprocals. It's reciprocals, yeah.
It used to be, I could go to Virginia to Carolina, but Carolina couldn't come to Virginia. And it was, every state was different.
They're trying to get everybody on the national.
But I think
where it's
they're
just one
losing,
certification.
they're losing a lot of people for that. I know what they're trying to do, but then you're condensing the training time, putting more continuing ed hours in a shorter amount of time, and you're busy as it is doing your job. Then you run an EMS. Then you got classes, and the people are getting burned out. I see it all the time. I hear it. I would like if, let's say somebody come from Colorado and their certification was good. Why not have an advisory board say, yep, they meet the criteria and they can run. They run a 6-month probation period like we do as a new EMT. Something to that effect. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's just, we're losing people left and right. And now with gas, God, it's killing them.
I'd be interested in knowing the history as to why we had to go with the National Registry. But I think there's more than meets the eye here because, you know, times have changed. And one of the scariest words to mortal man is test. And I hear all these stories about people going and taking that national test multiple times. And to be honest with you, there was 3 reasons I never pursued the EMT. I didn't have the time, I didn't have the money, and I was scared of the test. But, you know, some things that I've heard about this is almost like if you try to move to change it, you're going to dumb it down, which would be detrimental to our citizens. And I agree, there's people that can do a practical and they can do remarkable things, but they can't take that written test. So I'm at a quandary, and I would love to hear more from Mr. Mundy as well as Mr. Slimp about this before I feel comfortable going either way, because I've had some people complain about the test, but I've had more say that it's a good thing because everybody takes the same test. You have national certification. Yes, it might be harder, but yet once you achieve that goal, it's something to be proud of. And you've gotten the best training and you've passed a very difficult test. I'd just like to have more research like Mr. Slimp's going to come up here and add to that.
Not only that, but it's also how much effort I put into the class and how much effort I put into studying. We're seeing that on the fire side also. Absolutely. That the students aren't putting forth the effort. I mean, you can't just hand it to them. You got to earn it.
And I haven't heard anything from the association or the Fire and Rescue Commission about their thoughts in this. So as we normally do, we confer with them and listen to what they say because they are volunteers. They are experts. Mr. Slimp, can you add to that, please?
I would defer to Mr. Mundy first because he actually was an EMT instructor and a paramedic instructor.
Mr. Mundy, would you come forward, please?
Yes, sure, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I've been a part of this debate for a long time, and I hear exactly what you're saying, and I respect the positions that I've heard from Mr. Warren, Mr. Cheshire, and also our public safety officials. I've been certified in the Commonwealth of Virginia since 1980 as between an EMT and a paramedic, and I served 2 terms on the Virginia EMS Advisory Board. I was appointed by 2 different governors to serve on that committee. And I was in Richmond many, many hours when the same debate happened there that we're discussing here today about Virginia moving away from their own curricula and moving to the national standard. And I can tell you there was a lot of uncomfortable people in those conversations. I heard people on both sides of the issue. And I did go on record opposing the change from the Commonwealth of Virginia going to the national curriculum for the reasons that I've heard discussed here today. And what that's all about is Virginia was like many other states. They did not want to go through the difficulty of making their own curriculum, updating their own curriculum, making their own test, giving the test, and then going through that period over and over again. And they liked, at the state level, they liked the idea of providers from other states moving into Virginia, moving out of Virginia, and that way that investment of their time was protected by reciprocity into other states. But nonetheless, the debates were held, and one of the things that I thought Virginia did that was to the detriment of public safety, there was 2 advanced life support levels called shock trauma technician and cardiac technician, to where people could still do very invasive patient care procedures, and they didn't have to go all the way up to the paramedic level, spending that amount of time and energy. But since Virginia threw out the old model and went with the new, a lot of things have happened. Among those was the bar has been raised. The patient care is at its highest level. And I think that's really what drove it, but also the underlying factor was Virginia did not want to maintain its own curricula and be responsible for that. The EMS Advisory Board is a very large group. The vote was taken, that is an advisory board to the Virginia Department of Health, and then Virginia has since moved away from its own test and moved to the national standard. Now, does it hurt for the Board of Supervisors to take a position and send their position to Richmond? Absolutely not. You doing a legislative agenda each year, it would not be out of line for you doing that if it's a direction that you take. But I will have to say, out of the many years it's been since this move has been made to the national curricula, I think that once a provider endures the classes, they take the test, they're very highly trained. And when an ambulance pulls up to your residence or out on the side of the road, no matter the time of the day or the night, if it's a volunteer on that truck or if it's a career EMT or paramedic, you can rest assured that they've been trained very vigorously to a national standard. So that's the good news out of what comes out of it. But the bad of what comes out of it is what I hear being discussed here today, and that is that it's very tough for a volunteer to go through that rigorous process, and even some career providers. But your points are very well taken, and if the board wishes to send up a request like that to Richmond to be considered, you certainly have the choice in doing so, and you wouldn't be the first to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very lightning, needless to say. Mr. Slim, please add to that.
Well, he beat me by 2 years getting his first certification, but I can tell you, I voiced the same concerns as Clarence did back in those days. But I also, and I'll go out on a limb and say this, I think a lot of times those standards and testing and so forth are not developed with the volunteers in mind. I mean, I'll just bluntly say that. And I think, they forget about that sometimes. And, Virginia is probably one of the few states that still has so many volunteer EMS providers. We're really lucky in that. If you go around adjoining states, you'd find you don't have many volunteer EMS providers. So we're unique in that, and that's a good thing. But I think some of those standards aren't. And I agree with what y'all have said here. I hated the day we went away from the Virginia standards. I went through every one of those levels like Clarence probably did too, and you had to go a year between levels before you went up. Now I can come in off the street, go to college, and be a paramedic in 2 years, and there's some good and bad things about that. But I think I would agree. I think it doesn't hurt for our voice to be heard in expressing some of those concerns.
I had a EMT instructor tell me not long ago that a lot of people want the title. They're just not willing to spend the time and work hard enough to get it. And so, Bob, what I would like is to have more data before we construct a letter on a local level, making it very personal on the, how many volunteers we have that attempt to take it, how many times does it take them to pass it, and what's the pass-fail rate, and, just have a little bit more teeth in a letter.
I'm very comfortable in securing more data. I just don't want to drag our feet on it because I think it's critically important to our citizens to try to get an increase in volunteers as much as possible, because I think Mr. Slim just made a statement that I think is going to be probably play out in the state of Virginia. If we don't do something, we're not going to have volunteers because it's so time consuming to get through the national, to get to certifications, to be recertified. And I can really appreciate, Chris, your feelings on it and respect those 100%. And I agree with you on the moving in. If we ever could get them back to a Virginia-based test, I think it should be pretty rigid, but it shouldn't have some of the things on there that are not pertinent to our area. And it's easy to put it in legislation that if somebody has a national certification that moves here, that they are exempt. And as Mr. Cheshire said, it's easy to say, the first 6 months, even though they're exempt, they're on a probation period. So all of that can work. I'm just trying to raise the red flag that this is creating issues for rural Virginia, for our volunteers. I hear it from our department chiefs all the time that, we had 3 take the test or 4 take the test and, only 1 passed. And, you can't have a 25% success rate and be successful. And I'm not saying that's the number. I'm just, that could be, that's the number from one department I was talking to. So, I do agree with gathering the data, but I think we should do it with urgency.
We actually have the Virginia Office EMS pass rates from 2019 to 2021, if you'd like to hear those.
Do you have Pennsylvania counties?
Yes, 2 of them are instructors in Pennsylvania County.
Okay.
The first one would be a Tunstall volunteer fire and rescue member who's an instructor. Out of 10 students, she scored 70% with the office EMS. Then we have another instructor that taught at Gretna Fire and Rescue that had 19 students, and it's at 53% success rate. For 2022, we had 2 classes going from the beginning of the year that just finished. The one in Gretna had 13 students, and they're in the testing phases now. We had another one at Blair's Fire and Rescue that just finished. 8 are in the testing stage now. 1 has successfully passed. And then Tunstall has another EMT class starting in August.
Just real quickly, were we required to be part of the National Registry? Was that a decision that the State EMS Council made, or the government said you will have to take a...
It's a Code of Virginia.
State made the decision. Okay. How long ago?
Remember what year? When did they make the change over?
The changeover?
How long has it been? It's been a long
I
time.
guess it's been 10 years probably.
Okay.
You know, it's something to be interesting. How many volunteers did you have 10 years ago applying for EMT versus now? I would think you might be a significant difference.
I would say
And don't-
it's decreased.
Don't get me wrong, when I took my EMT, it wasn't easy. And granted, it was a day or two ago. And then I was one of the first to get my EMT enhanced. But I had an excellent instructor who was hard on us, and there was 5 of us, and 5 of us passed. But there was a lot of time that took to keep up with my skill set. And you don't see the guys having that now.
Correct.
And if you don't get it, they're fine, you can lose it.
I will say that we do have 3 EMT instructors in this county that are actively teaching yearly. So,
Anything else?
I'm going to make a motion to request that staff bring back in August all data that relates to this, and that, Chris, if you would go out and just kind of survey our chiefs and our department heads and all in the EMS and the fire and rescue to get some feedback on their feelings. I understand there's 2 sides, but if they would like to see us attempt to at least voice an opinion from Pennsylvania County. I'm not asking to beat anybody up about it. I'm just saying to voice our opinion that we feel like this is being restrictive to successfully promoting a volunteer EMS program. And, I don't want to criticize the national test. I'm not looking to criticize their decisions. I'm just trying to get them to get a better picture on what it does to rural communities and how restrictive it is to our volunteers. That's where I'm at. So if you could just kind of ask them and give us some feedback next month, it'd be greatly appreciated.
I think if we could put it on the agenda for fire and rescue this month, and what's the percentage of required to pass it? 80?
70.
70? Okay. I was just going to suggest that I know we're going to get varying opinions. Some, let's dumb it down, and others say leave it alone. So maybe we should adhere to the same percentage.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir.
I'm not wanting them to dumb it down the test. What I'm saying is there are things on this test that I've been told. I haven't taken the test, but I've been told.
You say yet?
Huh?
You say
No.
you haven't taken it yet?
Man, I'm way too old to be tested again.
We've got a class open if you'd like. So.
No.
I thought he said yet.
That there's things on the test that are related nationally, but not necessarily that you would face in rural Virginia. And I don't know that that's true. I'm going on hearsay. So, you know, are there, I mean, I know the human body doesn't change from California to Virginia, but, you know.
That's debatable.
There are, well, there are some dangers that incur in certain areas that don't incur in our area. And if that, I mean, when you talk about 70%, it doesn't take many misses. I mean, how many people are at 68 or 9 that if they didn't have one particular area that section that covers something that's not pertinent, never going to happen in Pennsylvania County or the state of Virginia, could cause that variation. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
You know, and another thing, OMDs, one will vary from one region to another in the same state. There are things that I couldn't do here that I might be able to do in Virginia Beach. But it doesn't suit me to learn it if I can't use it. And a lot of your OMDs.
Mr. Slimp, you had another thought. I saw it coming. Yes, you did.
I just make sure he was, when he's saying Chris, he was meaning this Chris.
Yeah, I was.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, anything else?
I made that a motion.
Yep. What about a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? All right. Cast your vote. Bob, if you could see my grades between high school and college, you would understand I'm like more than 60% percentile rather than 80, but
I like the curve.
Tim, second. Tim, hit your second over there, please.
Hit your second. Don't tell me about that test. I had to take the suggested. It's like a third of a percent. I'm sure it's okay.
All right, now it's ready for a vote.
Okay. All righty, that'll pass. Thank y'all so much. Mr. Adcock, I think you're up next. How you doing? Doing well, sir.
We wanted to give a brief update of the construction of our new convenience sites and the ongoing planning and engineering of some of the existing convenience sites for some improvements. As you recall, we had 3 under planning at the same time because of the DEQ's kind of intensive stormwater reviews on the Meadow Ridge court site. We kind of bid the level run site and the climax site together to kind of move those forward. And this is the level run site. It's at 7550 Level Run Road in Long Island. This is a front view from just above the entrance. The construction contract for that site was $375,694. It is about 95% complete. We are waiting on lighting, exterior lighting, and the compactor delivery. This is a view of the entrance into the site. This is inside the site. To the left there is the what will be the compactor pad. We have been waiting also on compactor delivery, which has been delayed somewhat, but we have received schedules for next week for the compactor installation at Level Run and also at Climax, which will occur at the same time next week. This is a view from just inside the entrance looking back towards the rear of the site. You see in the middle there is the compactor pad, and to the very rear is the recycling and the roll-off pads. The Climax site is located at 8004 Climax Road in Gretna. The compactor installation, as I mentioned, will be next week. We're going to do that one first because it's already, it's a little bit further along, and the lighting and everything has been installed on that project. The construction contract for that one was $513,879. This is the Climax site from the rear. This is the control building to the right, and you can see the recycling container pads beyond. This is the the roll-off box retaining walls at the climax site from for our bulk debris containers. The Meadow Ridge Court site, after we finally got approval from DEQ, stormwater approval, we began grading on that site in early June. That site is located at 211 Meadow Ridge Court in Gretna, which is just below Blair Construction. Going north is kind of between Blair Construction's office off of 29 and the first Gretna exit. The expectation is to complete this site in the early spring of 2023, but I have had some comments from the contractor who is anticipating hopefully to get paving done this year prior to the annual shutdown of the paving contractors, which occurs usually in November, early December, depending on the weather. So he's kind of being aggressive, and hopefully that will be the case. If we can get the pavement down, that will help expedite things when the weather breaks in 2023, and we can get this open a little bit earlier. In addition to those construction sites, we are looking at some improvements on some existing sites. Those are in various stages of design and engineering. Those are our Mount Herman site at 3575 Franklin Turnpike, our Berry Hill site, which is located at 110 Target Drive, and the Motley site, which is in Hurt at 1130 Highway View Road, which is right off of the 29, right at the entrance, the exit to Hurt. This is a draft that we've recently received, a draft design of the expansion of the Mount Herman site. As some of you recall, we purchased some property, the county purchased property behind that site. So this is what we're looking to do behind that site, is to add a couple of ground level compactor pads. That's kind of what we're going to with these new sites instead of the below grade compactors. They're a little bit easier to maintain, and it's the new style. So we have a space for two of those. We anticipate just putting in one compactor when this particular expansion opens, but we'll have a space for an additional compactor there, and you have dual drive-ups for the citizens. And we also have two additional pads for either recycling or additional bulk debris containers there, which are shown just between the existing fence and the compactors. So that'll be kind of a loop at the back of that site that you can loop through to help with traffic flow. The budget estimate I received that today for that site, and it is right at $400,000 for the Mount Herman site, $399,700 for that, and about $120,000 of that is pavement. That's probably your biggest expense with these sites is pavement and the concrete work. Our Motley site is one we're looking at for this, that's currently in the survey stage. Some considerations for this site, for revising this site, or better incorporation of the recycling containers. You can see that we've kind of had to place them in wherever we had room. Sometimes it's not particularly accommodating for traffic where we have to put them, and it's certainly not accommodating for our roll-off drivers to pick them up. We're looking for improved traffic flow, increased capacity at this site, improving the existing retaining walls, which have some age to them, and enhancing the access to the site facilities. We hope that this will increase the use of the compactors for our daily household trash instead of the open tops for disposal. We would like to keep the open tops free for bulk debris. The Berry Hill site is also under survey. We are looking for better incorporation of the waste and recycling containers also at this site, improving the traffic flow. You can look on this view. There's the red area highlighted as an area that we've identified that we could grade for some additional space for open tops and recycling containers. We want to improve the traffic flow and capacity also at this site, enhance the safety aspects, probably do better lighting. We have some really good lighting in our new sites. I think one of the building and grounds guys told me that he went by the Level Run site or the Climax site the other day, and it looks like it's lit up like an airport. So hopefully that will give the citizens some additional safety, and we will look to change those site lightings with these upgrades as well. We also want to facilitate increased use of the compactors for household waste disposal so that we can maximize our efficiency in dumping. We don't have to pick up a open top that's full of household trash. We can put that all in a compactor and get better efficiency with our pickups. So with that, I'll open for any questions you may have regarding those.
Chris, did you have a price on the Berry Hill site?
We have not received that. Since that's just in the survey stage right now, they have not done a preliminary design, so we do not have a cost yet for that one. Same with the Motley site.
Okay.
There was some delay in the surveys because of just workload, so they're a little bit behind on those. That's why we had a cost estimate on the Mount Herman site.
A little bit. You know, a lot of people are frugal and just simply don't like the thought that there's people throwing away valuable pieces of furniture and just items in general. And then the idea come up to have these buildings where the items could be donated and stored and subsequently taken over to the pet center. And I talked to Mr. Hicks about getting a building there, and he told me it'd be about maybe $4,000. Is that part of what's been done here, or is that totally separate and standalone?
I don't think it's particularly in this estimate, but these estimates have contingency factors in them that are based on a percentage of the overall cost. So I'm sure there's some leeway in there to do a building like that.
Yeah, I knew that. I think Mount Herman and Mount Cross had them and somewhat on an experimental basis, but that was a really good idea. I'd like to see one at not only Cascade but Berry Hill.
Okay. We can certainly work that into the proposal.
Yeah, I think we've had some success with that at Mount Herman.
Yeah.
But I like the idea in the test program with using a building, because I will remind folks that when we didn't have a policy about and didn't have somebody man those sites, there's been many people that have been fished out of those compactors. And can you imagine if somebody mashed the wrong button, the liability the county would face?
Yep.
So I like the idea. We don't let them get in there, but we put them in a place where they can be used to benefit everyone. So,
That's good.
And then the new style compactors do offer a little bit better safety as well, because they're not as deep. So that's a benefit as well.
Mr. Mundy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I commend the board for the steps that you're taking in the right direction for your convenience centers. You go around to various communities, that's one of the first things that I always look at is the shape of garbage collection, and you want it to be clean and neat, and you want to make it convenient for the citizens to throw the trash away properly instead of it being out on the side of the road. So I do like the fact that you're working from a plan. You always want to continue improving that, and what the staff is looking for now is some direction from you on what your priorities are. We only have a finite amount of money, as Ms. Vanderhyde was reminding us about, but knowing what Mr. Adcock is talking about that you have in queue right now that you're working on, but tell us, if you will, and you don't have to do that right now, to want to put you on the spot, of what your priorities are on the next sites that you may want to develop and what your anticipated timeline is, and then we can keep bringing projects back to you as resources allow.
well, I think it's getting that Mount Herman site since that's the biggest one.
Did he say Berry Hill? I remember we spent a big chunk of money buying some land up there, and all we try to do is get ours straightened out, but that's good.
So Chris,
Good
how
idea,
much
Mr.
to the
Mundy.
bad budgeted wise are we for all the projects versus what we have budgeted?
Actually, I was not involved in what we did for the bond, but I'm assuming we took these engineering estimates when we went for our bond amounts, and just looking at the only one that was, the construction cost was over the engineer's estimate was Level Run Road, which the contract, I think, was, $390, I believe, and that estimate was $313,000. But looking at Climax, our Our engineer's estimate was 593, and I believe that was, I'd have to go back and, I don't know how to pull that back up, but I believe it was 540,000 was the construction cost, and the engineer's estimate on Meadow Ridge Court was 1.9 million, and the contract came in at 1.6. So we're looking pretty good, as long as we, don't have any major changes.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to take a good while to get the two done that we're working on. I mean, besides the one that you're just waiting for equipment to come in. I went by one of them, they look great, but the Mount Herman and the Berry Hill, I do agree, need to be completed, and that gives us some time to start that, Mr. Mundy, and maybe later on in the year, we could address the idea of the next ones when we get a little feel for, where the needs may be based on the new sites that are in the northern end of the county, because they haven't had those. And we may find feedback from the citizens dictates to what we have to do next, in relationship to the northern end of the county. Because what we've done may not be sufficient for that area, if that's would be amenable to the board. Just to give them give us a few months to get some feedback from those folks.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything else? Chris, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. 7, business meeting discussion items. Are there any? That brings us down to closed session. What about a motion that we go into closed session?
Sure, I'll be happy to read it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
We have 2 closed sessions this afternoon, both under legal. Consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A8. Subject matters, jail and 2022 Vadi Amendment. Purpose, legal consultation / legal advice regarding the same.
Thank you, sir. A motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. What about a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Dalton, thank you, sir. Gentlemen, cast your vote. And we will take a brief bathroom break.
Okay, the Board of Supervisors returns to open session at 5:35 PM. We will now certify the closed session. Be it resolved that at the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session on July 19th, 2022, the board hereby certifies by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any board member believes that there was a departure from the requirements of the act, he shall so state prior to the vote indicating the substance of the departure. The statement shall be recorded in the board's minutes. So, Mr. Cheshire.
Yes.
Mr. Dalton.
Yes.
Mr. Dudley.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scarce.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Barksdale.
Yes.
Mr. Ingram.
Yes.
Meeting's hereby certified. Mr. Chairman, if you want to adjourn the work session, that'd be appropriate at this time.
I do hereby adjourn the work session.